here, expand this over here on the left side. And then we're going to grab this connection string. Now the connection string is in the shared access policy underneath here. So there's a couple of clicks to get to it. And then you see the primary connection string. Then you go back and add that in. So now we have that one. Can paste that in. And what else we got to do? We have to grab the database connection string now. So we don't have that either. So we're going to go and grab that one as well. Add. We're going to paste that in here as well. Then we're going to go also grab that. So I logged in twice in here. So I'm going to open this, go to my resource group here again. And call it database connection string. So open that up. Now going to the connection string here, we can grab the connection string. So there's two connection strings. There's one which you can grab if you are using Active Directory or Intra, which is the first one. And the second one, because we choose to go with this username or password, we're just taking the ADO connection string, right? So that's what we're going to be using. Go here. So we're going to grab that and paste that in here. And then we're going to put the password that we provided so we can connect to our backend database. Let's see what that is. There was a placeholder for it. I don't know why I did with it. I lost it. Oops. I'm gonna paste it twice. Hey, there we go. Sorry, that was me. We just put the password in. And we have apply. What else do we need? The time trigger. This is the cron job that will be looking for files after you push them through a secure FTP. So to be looking for files that land in a specific folder every minute. And then that will be picked up and pushed along the way so we can get it processed. So that's basically what we're adding in here. So this is going to be a timer trigger. And it's set to 1 minute. So it just comes every minute and checks to see whether there's any files that need processing. We could grab it from here to here. Oops, oops, wrong place. Go here. And paste that in here. And apply that. Apply this. Confirm. I think we're good with configs. So configs is done. The next thing we're going to upload these files. So I do have them locally on my machine. Normally, if you have a CI/CD pipeline, I recommend extending the CI/CD YAML to push these additional files out in the enterprise environment. But for now, since it's a training course, we're just uploading locally from my machine. So I can reveal all the files here, right click, I'll grab the files and we can browse to them. What I'm going to do. Or another option is that if you already have all the things installed, Microsoft does give you an option here to upload to a storage account, but you have to have a storage account installed. The assumption is already authenticated. It will ask you for the storage account name, which if it's smart enough to pick it up, it's trying to load this. It knows there's a storage account out there. And then it's asking whether you want to put it into a container, which is what we're doing here. And then you can then decide what container you want to put. It's going to create a new block container for you. But this is one way of doing it. But if you want to do it through the Azure way, which is really what we're here for, I will show you how to do that from there. So this is the option if you're doing VS Code. A lot of people don't like to come into Azure, so Microsoft is doing a very good job trying to prevent you from coming into Azure, so you can set a lot of the stuff up without going into Azure at all. But if you want to do from Azure, it's a different setup. So we have to go back into them, close this window. We don't need that anymore. Go into our storage account here. And let's just talk about a few things that a storage account has to offer, right? So a storage account is basically one of the resources that is very, very important in your collection of resources in Azure. So if you're into any kind of architecture or recommending solutions to businesses, this is one of the ones that you need to understand the value proposition here. So it does have containers, shares, queues, and tables. It's not just storing files. Now, anything in the container has an event hooked into it. So you can listen to anything in this container by triggers. I'm going to leverage that for our solution. And I'm creating that config folder that we talked about earlier, that inside of the configuration settings, and this is where I'm going to upload my files. So one more thing before I do that. This error here is complaining because I'm not using intra. So I have to go back and correct that. I have to go into my configuration section here, scroll down and turn this capability off because we didn't enable intra. Save that. And if you're doing a demo on your own subscription, you probably have to go through the same exercise. But if you're in a corporate environment with an enterprise environment with AD set up, you don't have to worry about that. So go back here, the arrow should go away. That's gone away. So now we can do the upload. So I'll browse. I'm just going to pull it from my local machine. I'm going to grab all these files and then I'll walk through. I'll try and walk through as many as possible, but all the ones we need to get started. And then we'll just go through them later on once we have those uploaded. So this is done. It's uploaded. What do we have to do next? So we've uploaded the file, we created a config file, we uploaded it. Now we're going to.
But what I often use this for
Is that a question? Is someone's asking a question, okay, they had a. That's what someone's asking a question. All right, so we've configured, we already created this container already, but we need two more additional containers. We need to have a pickup and process, right? So if you go back to this location and go up one, we're going to create two additional containers here to handle some additional things. Now, we'll show you here, self-explanatory. It said the pickup file, these files are copied from the SQL FTP share and dropped in the and pickup container. So we're going to have that. So that during that data integration or data ingestion cycle, we see these containers getting used along the way. So this is our place for pickup. We have one for processed. Let's add that in here. And then we keep going down and looking at instructions. We have to create a table. I'm going to go back to. So this is where the storage account has a lot of value. And then we shift to a different icon here. What tables? So tables are NoSQL. This is a NoSQL table, believe it or not. It actually allows you to dynamically create files, records without having to have a schema. So this is a schemaless solution, basically. So we're going to be showing you how we're going to be using that today. I'm going to create a NoSQL data store. Yeah, so I'm going to add this in. I'm going to use today's date, 2024, 12/18. Then you go back here. And the share is important. So this is where we're going to do our secure FTP drop according to requirements. So we're going to have a placeholder. So any file that comes outside of Azure through our secure FTP drop will land here first. And then we have a cron job, which is going to be in charge of watching that folder to make sure files get picked up every minute. So some of the advantages of using a file share is that you get a significant size to work with. So, notice I have a 100 TB size. So that's why I like storage account because if you're migrating a lot of data to Azure, this is the way to go. So 2024, 12/18. So imagine a database you're trying to get into Azure and it's maybe 50 TB or 5 TB. The only thing you have to pay for is ingress. A lot of people don't like to pay for ingress cost, which is the cost that it takes to transfer the file over the internet into Azure because you have to pay for that. So people might opt to use something like a physical appliance, like a data box or something, so they can move it into that. But either way, it's a good option. Now, let me go back previous. One thing that Microsoft does a very good job of is because they recognize that you're moving files into this location, they do default backups. So it's something you need to look into. If this is default by checked, if it's not checked, you can check it, or if you don't need backup, you just uncheck it. In that case, we don't need it for a demo. So we can review and create and keep going. Let's go here. We're switching over to Service Bus now. So in Service Bus, this is the guy that's handling all our messages that are coming in, right? So this is all done. We'll come back and revisit that. No, sorry, this is all done here. So we can come out from this one and go back here. There we are. This is our Service Bus here. So I go back to the overview tab in our Service Bus. You can see that. And Service Bus has two options. We have queues, which is what you guys are familiar with if you guys have done any kind of messaging. It's first in, first out, single consumer, single publisher. Those are your standard queues. One person can listen to messages, one person can publish messages. With topics, you get more flexibility in the sense that you have multiple people that can consume one message. So imagine if you're pushing data to multiple backend data sources, this is the way to go. So that's why I'm choosing this option, right? And if I go into the documentation, we have to create one topic, which is called request. Then we have two subscribers who are going to be listening to that topic itself. So we're going to go here. So I go back here. Now a topic comes with a default size, which is 1 gig. You can increase it up to 5 gig. It means I can hold 5 gigs worth of messages, even though someone is not getting off the queue. I'm just going to keep the defaults because we're not going to be passing. We're going to be taking the messages off. And if your message is not picked up in 14 days, it gets dropped. You have to resend them after 14 days, which is plenty enough time for you to actually get your messages if you have any issues. Now, once you create the topic, then you have to have subscribers to be able to pull the messages off. And this is where we have this thing called subscriptions. And if you go back to our documentation here, we are picking up two subscribers, one for the NoSQL database and one for the SQL database. Let me create that one now. Now, on the subscriber side or the subscription side, they're going to try to pull the messages off the queue, or in this case, off the topic 10 times. If that fails, it's going to dead letter it. So, for any reason, if they can't pick it up or it's not getting picked up at all, either way, it gets dropped after 14 days. And if it gets picked up and it can be processed, it still gets dropped after 14 days, but it's in a separate queue for it to pick up. So, I'll create that. And the next one I want to create is one for the SQL database. I'm going to add another one. Same deal with SQL. Same setup. I'm going to keep all the defaults. And if we go back to documentation, we're all done. So it's like we got everything all set up here. Now we're going to come back and look at Custo. This is the part where we're talking about setting up the secure FTP. But before we do that, I want to do some simple testing to make sure that we have the basics done. So now we have everything set up here. We can go back to our Azure function, which is basically the guy who is going to be handling a lot of the changes. But before we do that, let's just have a quick glance at the configuration file that's going to be doing all the work for us. So if we go back to documentation, yeah, I try to do the best to explain, scroll up here, the documentation, I think is this one. I try to do the best to explain what each config represents in terms of what his responsibilities are. And that just shows, okay, for this config is to upload the file, this one is to parse the file, these ones are to search the database. So I mean, we're going to be using those. Some for getting reports. And then we have ones for copying files from SQL into the pickup folder. So I try to explain what each config file does. Um, what does the config file look like? Let's have a quick look at it. It's JSON based, so if you know JSON is fairly easy. Try to use the most common messaging pattern as possible, so that way there's no learning curve here. Let's look at the first one. This is a copy file. I try to name them as much as possible. So this basically, we've created this file share already. So we called it training. So it's already created. We have a pickup folder, which we've created already. It's going to create a folder within it for processing. We're going to be taking CSV files. That's how the ingestion is going to be coming in. And then it cleans up after itself. So once the files have been moved to a different location, it cleans up. So you don't have files piling up once they're processed. So the next one is this is just creating a NoSQL table. This is a sample to write to a database. Normally, if you have an endpoint, you just want to test to make sure it's working. So we have that in there. We can take advantage of that. We have time. This is uploading the file. Uh, this uploads the file and splits it. So what we've decided to do is that any file that's over 200 records becomes a batch. So I mean, to be 200 records become a batch. So if you have 1,000 records, we have 5 batches. So we just capped our size. Okay, if your file is a million, if file has 1,000 records, we're going to create 5 batches of physical files so that way we can put it into the service bus. So you can increase this to a size that you're comfortable with, but I feel like 200 records is a good size for me. Because everything in here is configurable, by the way, so you don't necessarily have to follow the same setup I have here. So let's go to file here. This is for searching. Once we have data in the back end, how do we put the data back out? And what do we have here? This is service bus trigger. So we need someone to be taking the messages off. So this guy's responsibility is to take the message off the service bus and then connect to our database and then insert it into our backend system. So he's responsible for doing that. Paste that here. This is get payload. This is for pulling the messages and batches from our backend system. First, get to that as well. 70, I look at 70 already. Yes. This is a trigger. So when the files gets pushed into our backend system and gets sliced into byte sizes of 200 records, this guy's a listener on an event level. This is event-based triggering. So as the file gets dropped, this event automatically kicks off and puts it onto our service bus. So our service bus had a topic name which we created called a topic. Topic name was a request, so that's what we're going to put in all our messages to. So this guy handles that flow. So paste that in here. I see EML again, lost in this F. Almost there. This is for the NoSQL one. So NoSQL database. And we have one for SQL, which we just looked at. And connecting, this connects to our database. So we can just pull records back. There's not much to do here. So once we have the data in our database, we want to be able to query the data to make sure that it's there, it's present. We can actually pull it down through an API. So we have to build an API that allows us to pull the data back out as well. So and this actually is for reporting. So if we choose to use the reporting engine like Power BI to pull our reports, this actually provides an endpoint that allows us to connect directly to our database without requiring some kind of gateway in between. So this has that capability to expose that as well. We looked at this one, uploading files. Let's paste that in here. All right, so let's this one here. I love this stuff again, is explanatory. I put in the documentation so you can see. This is for coding for our reports. We have to do base 64 encoding if you want to do reporting. And we talked about liquid at the beginning of the what does a liquid template look like? It actually takes data. It's a good example where we're going to be passing in some college data and you can rename the properties as you go along. So if you don't like one of these address information, you can change it. Very good, a good capability for doing transformation of JSON, or we can transform it into HTML or anything else. We do have an HTML liquid, so it does have the reason why it's very powerful. You can take raw data and transform it into HTML if you wish to. So if you want to do direct reporting instead of a browser, you can do that as well. The rest of these additions, I'm not going to spend too much time on these ones. Kind of like I had this for a previous demo. I'm just going to save these. But they're not going to apply to what we're doing today, I don't believe. I'm just going to save these ones because these are replications of those. I'm going to clean this up, but we don't need those two last ones. So now we have everything set up in here. The next thing we're going to do is do some testing. I'm going to bring in Postman, which I mentioned to you at the beginning. We're going to be using that for testing our API endpoints to make sure that everything we just done uh, is going to work, right? Because we've configured a lot here and we want to make sure that at least everything is working as expected. So let me just pull up Postman for a minute here. I'm going to close some windows. Just give me a second. I should have had it ready already, but I didn't have it. All right. Okay, let's bring it up. And we're going to be doing, taking this time to load. Let's bring it over here. Slow today. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to upload search. We're going to do a couple of things here to test it out. Then we can start doing the FTP piece. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out what our endpoint looks like. So if you're in Azure and you want to get your endpoint or the base URL, or how you're going to start, we can go into Azure Functions. I'm going to come out of this, open up our function app, and then we have the base entry point into our backend system, which is the function app here. And one more thing before I get started, let me plug this in first. So into our upload, because obviously this training course is different. One more thing before I get started, which I forgot to mention, is connectivity between the systems. Now, when I configured our SQL database, if you're paying attention, I set it up to no access. And what that means is truly no access. Nobody can get into, including any system in Azure. Microsoft does that on purpose because they don't want the SQL database is mostly getting is the one that's highly attacked when it's publicly available. So you have to apply extra level of security to get it done. So what they've done is that the firewall has to be opened up to have access. So even though we have connectivity, we don't. I mean, we have the pipe, but we don't have the connectivity. So we have to select the network that we need to establish connectivity on. And that's where you can use your local IP or you can use a VNet integration. Like I mentioned before at the beginning that if you're in an enterprise environment, I recommend you going with this option, which is adding your virtual network rule. You would set up a virtual network, or this is obviously like a network on-prem, but it's virtually available. Microsoft will set it all up for you. And then you associate your resources that want to talk to that to the same network. But we're not doing that today because we actually don't have a network and we don't want to, obviously, we're not training, we don't have a time to do a training course on networking. We're going to add allow services like the function app to communicate with it. So that's step one. And two, I need to add my IP address so I can at least talk to the system here. So I had to find out my IP. I thought I had it set up here already. Let me get my IP address. And I can add that in here. So get out of that. Get my IP address. I paste that in there. And what that does gives me access to the management studio. So I can do create schemas for our database, which I haven't done yet, which I need to actually as part of the testing process. This is not working. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. It's taking this a little slow. Hit save. So now I have access to Management Studio or uh whatever I need. So let me come out from this. All right, so that's saved. So now if I go into the way I do a quick test here is that if I come out from here, go into our database, go into our query editor here. This is like a lightweight version of Management Studio. I can actually authenticate the credentials which are provided. And if this works, that means I have access, I have firewall is open so I can get in. And obviously, if you try to do the same thing, you'll be able to get in because your IP address is not whitelisted. So what I can go ahead and do is create a schema that represents the and everything again is available. It's checked into the repository. I have some scripts here, which is just boilerplate and scripts for college. And this is basically what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to select this and go over to here and just create it. So it's a simple create table SQL, and that's happened. So now we have a placeholder here to hold our data. So we can switch back over to our API and start doing some testing. Now the upload file here is the first one we're going to be using for our test case, right? So if I go back to our documentation, I'm going to be jumping around here a little bit. You will see that the upload file is basically what we're going to be using here. We're going to upload and parse the file. I'm going to grab this one, is what we need, and then go back to our API here. I'm going to paste that in here. already in an upload file here. And then this is set to the date, so everything here is fine. Then we can actually browse. And we notice that the API key, X API key now here is protected. Without this X API key, then this API is not really going to work at all. So I have some data that I'm going to be testing with. So let me see if I can pull that up. This is our testing data here. Get that data out. All right, then let's see if we can pull the data up here. Uh, Sample testing, training. I thought I had some training data here, but maybe not. Yeah, so I'm just bringing this into scope here, some of the data we're going to be using to do our testing today. All right, so let's see. Let's go types here.